order of the Monday, January 27th, Village of Oxford Village Council special workshop meeting at 7 p.m. So although, please rise, pay respects to the flag, and join in silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Terry, can you call the roll, please?
Bailey?
I'm here.
Ross?
Here.
Collins? Jefferson? Kemp? Here. Logan? Here.
Make a motion to excuse Mrs. Hummels.
Support.
There's a motion of support. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Approval of the agenda, the January 27th agenda for this evening. I'd like to make one minor amendment under 7C, if we could add a D, strategic planning in general.
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda with the made amendment. Support.
There's a motion of support. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The agenda is approved as amended. Approval of the January 14th, 2020 minutes.
Make a motion to adopt the minutes as received. Support.
There's a motion of support to adopt the minutes as presented. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? All right, the minutes are adopted. Thank you. All right, call to the public. Call to the public on any topic you wish to address the council. We don't have a podium today, this work session, so we don't have a podium for a work session. So you can sit where you are. Just let us know who you are. If you want to tell us your address, you're welcome to do so, and state your business. And you know, since this is a work session, I think we can respond a little bit more than a formal session, but our legal counsel has advised that it should not be a conversation that is moving towards an action item, so to speak. So if we need to follow up with you, we can do so through staff. So call to the public at this time. Any public comments?
I have one question. Are you waiting to speak individually for the, under 7A? Or is this now our time to speak?
I guess I don't understand the question, I'm sorry.
Is this now our time to speak under your
Residential
agenda, 7A?
rental inspection.
Yeah, this is the call to the public. So these other sections, we shouldn't have any public involvement in those.
Each city's a little different, so I always
Right.
ask. We're here about 7A.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, can you just tell your names, where you're from? So,
Edward and Candace Isaacson. We live in a village, I'm not, well, we have
Township.
2 units in the village of Oxford. We live in the township. Our family's been doing rentals for 20-some plus years. And I'm trying to understand what's the big push now to opposite and register rentals, add extra ordinances. Is there a problem in the village? What seems to be the change from the past? And is it just a bad blight? Trying to understand what,
Sure.
what's the reasoning behind it? Because, I mean, in a mile-by-mile square, how many rentals do you really have in the city?
Right, and that's a very good question. We don't know, because there's not a registration at this point. We've talked with the fire chief, and one of the reasons is for life safety, is to have that registration, understand where rental units are. There are a number of rental units that there's not even a separate water bill for those rental units. And so when our firefighters are in a situation where they need to enter property due to structure fire, emergency, whatever the situation may be, there have been situations where those firefighters into that unit, or the building, and there's more units than they were originally aware of, which can cause situations.
Well, you mean breaking down a house into multiple family units within...
Exactly, and there's been situations where they need to go up a stairwell, and that stairwell's not even there anymore, or whatever that case may be. So some of this is to register those units to better understand where there could be situations where life safety could be at risk.
So permits were never pulled and changes were never made to the building? Interesting.
But that can happen in
Even with the rules?
That could happen anywhere, exactly
Right.
right. But without that registration initially, again, we don't even know how many rentals we have at this point.
Because I'm trying to understand basically the differences between, you got a lot of ordinances out there that basically covers a lot of the stuff already, right? So ordinances are already established, and we're gonna add more to it.
Well, that's-
I have a little fear of this because of just
Carte
pile
blanche.
on fees is what I'm calling it, and then I'm not saying that's your goal.
And that's one of the things we're going to discuss this evening, is what is currently on the books that can assist us with that mechanism, and what's missing, where does this need to go, et cetera, et cetera. So I saw a couple other hands up, but I want to be clear, we're going to do this, even though this is a more informal, we're still going to go one by one. We're all not going to just jump in and then be chaos, because we ultimately do have a lot of business that we got to get to. So, were you folks all set?
I was gonna show you pictures.
Well, I mean, one of my biggest things is basically, I had a house next door to me that was vacant for 15 plus years.
Okay,
The roof was coming in, there was critters in
This
there.
one's ours.
okay,
And, we take good care of our house, but we have people that actually own their house, and there's one on the First Street.
This one is.
Basically, it looks like the whole thing's kind of falling apart. What happens in that case versus it's not a rental?
so we have adopted the International Building Maintenance Code, and that applies to all properties, not just rentals.
Is that gonna be supplied
That's
to
residential and commercial?
each registered rental? Because there's a fee is established to get those requirements.
So that, the International Building Maintenance Code has been adopted. It was adopted years ago. We just recently adopted the more recent version of the International Building Maintenance Code, 2015, I believe.
Okay.
There's no fees associated with that, and there have already been cases where tenants have called and inspections were made at the request of tenants.
Is there any way we could get a copy of that?
The International Building
Yeah,
Maintenance Code,
where we don't
it's
pay for it.
available, I assume, online.
It is online for a purchase price.
For a purchase price?
And it changes yearly.
It does change, and that's why we try to keep up with those changes and adopt, the most recent version as necessary.
I seen you had noted that there's a checklist and things that are gonna be instituted.
To be determined. Again, this is a work session. We're not there yet. We've not taken any action other than to bring it to discussion.
Yeah. I'm just kind of opposed to it just for the fact is you're gonna bring in additional inspectors.
Right.
Seems to me like the code enforcement's been kind of maybe overwhelmed. They haven't been able to take care of the initial codes on some houses. And now the village is gonna be incurring more cost to have this inspected.
All things we will talk about this evening.
Okay.
You can email me and I can perhaps share some of that stuff with you. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Tom Clayton, I got the same concern he's got.
Okay.
Well, my question is, what brings this all on? We got all these people that are opposed. Who are the people that's promoting it? Where's all this coming from? Before you solve a problem, you gotta have a problem. And you got a list of complaints, problems. You gotta have some kind of evidence of why do we need this?
Right.
What is it? What's the evidence?
One of the evidence is
I'm not
the
talking
gentleman.
about maybe something will happen. What has happened? What is the list of things that happened and why we need this?
I see what you're saying. Yep, I don't have that list in front of me.
Have you got a list?
I don't personally have a list.
I mean,
But
what are the problems and how many?
That's a very good question, because as I've already stated, we don't even know how many rentals we have.
I've had experience with inspections, and you can't believe how bad they get out of control. Trust me, it
Understand.
works that way.
Thank you.
And the more people you get involved, the worse it gets. And it gets expensive. They start out with free registration 1 year. What about next year and next year? It comes piling on. It's not free every year. It's free to get you signed up.
All
Then they
things we're
got-
going to talk about this evening.
Pardon?
Well, all things we will discuss this evening when we get to that.
But I mean, you're looking like you've got a solution.
We do not have a solution, which
Looking
is,
for a problem.
as you remember at the public hearing a few weeks ago, a month or so ago.
I was at one of them.
Yeah, you were at one of them, and since then, we have gotten additional information from our code enforcement folks and our building officials, and at last meeting, it was not ready to go to any sort of vote, which is why we brought it to this discussion session.
But what I'm saying is, it don't make a difference what we say. It makes a difference, they're gonna ram it through. I don't care what we
Who's gonna ram
say.
it through?
And they have these meetings, and they sit up there like they're listening to the public, and it doesn't matter what the public says, they're gonna ram it anyway.
We're listening.
That's how
right now.
government works. We got so many ordinances and they overlap.
Sure. And that's one of the things we're gonna discuss this evening.
We don't need any more ordinance. Oxford pretends to be Republican. If they want to be Democrat, they need to declare that. That's how they operate.
Well, Oxford, the village of Oxford is nonpartisan, and.
They're mostly Republican, aren't they?
To my knowledge, nobody on this
Pretty much.
table
Well,
has
I mean,
declared
it's
one
kind
way
of
or
well known
another.
that they always vote Republican mostly,
Perhaps, I don't know.
but
how
they try to
council
govern like
members-
Democrats.
Okay.
More taxes, more regulations. We gotta stop that.
All right, thank you.
We got too many.
Thank you. Any other comments? Public comment? We're still on public comment. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd like to take a moment and just, you gotta ask yourself whether this is a good idea or not. Right now, there are no rental ordinances in Auburn Hills, Clarkston, Lake Orion, Ortonville, Rochester, Rochesterville, Addison, Brandon, Independence, Oakland, Orion, or Oxford Township. You will be unique in that regard if you decide to enact this. It will make this village comparatively less attractive to investment, and it will impact the investment property values as a result. And recent history also suggests it will result in less, not more, overall tax revenues. When Pontiac enacted a rental registration ordinance and investment property values dropped significantly as investors abandoned the city. I don't expect that this will be any different. Landlords can vote with their feet and move their money elsewhere, and that's what will happen here. Okay. As a result of the overall tax revenue decline, Pontiac was turned over to a state-appointed emergency manager, and the police department was dissolved. You think that made Pontiac a safer community? Okay, so do we want Oxford to be more like Lake Orion, Rochester, and Clarkston, or more like Pontiac? Your decisions and actions will determine which way this community goes in the future. And additionally, due to the M24 construction, this year will already be a challenging year for investors in this community, so why make it more difficult for those of us who choose, and let me emphasize the word choose, to invest in this community and who pay an additional 18 mils in property taxes to support this community, the police, and the fire departments. Another thing is most houses in this village are over 100 years old. The residential building codes were not enacted until the 1970s. Most of them were built 50 years before there was such thing as a residential building code. Now, most people, as a result of the costs incurred to bring a house that's over 100 years old up to the current code, would probably find that cost too much to bear, would likely evict their tenants and sell their properties. This is exactly what happened in Pontiac. It's happening in Detroit now. It's an investment decision. You need to understand the economics of business. People will not spend more on a property than it's worth. They will sell it. First, they'll evict their tenants. They'll sell their properties, and then they will move out and take their money elsewhere where they're appreciated and welcome. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any others? This is still public comment. Call to the public.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the proposed adult marijuana use
Okay.
ordinance. Yeah. I know there are pros and cons of it, and it's wonderful when we have, the ideal of, you can be an individual and, your own use in your own home. That's a good thing. There are also, medical benefits we recognize to marijuana. And then also to your body would be the huge tax increase, the revenues, tax revenues that come into the budget. So, those are very, very enticing things. But the cons of bringing, encouraging businesses that will, be either for the retailers, the micro businesses, the growers, the transporters, the compliance, etc. I would maintain that, do we really, really want to encourage this industry in our fair town of Oxford? It seems like the economy is doing really well, and I see all these businesses that have, workers needed, employment needed. It seems like it's very enticing for the tax benefits, but, the long range, especially on children, and the accessibility in the home, or in the boat, or in the car, and the accessibility to young teens who are very curious is really something I would hope your body would consider. We have impacts possibly on fire and rescue, police, accidents, more accidents because of what pot does to young brains, and all of the influences that perhaps it has on the school system, and the fact that there will be more truancy perhaps when kids get hold of their mom and dad's, or whoever's marijuana in the home. And so if we have, increased truancy, I know that it makes it very difficult for kids to remember. Their memory is impacted, and the motivation to study, and as well as the influence on kids' muscles. They don't have the reaction, muscular reaction that they need. So we're talking, a huge growth possibly in the budgets of police and fire and rescue, even DPW. Have we looked at possibly what it does to our risk management budget? What does it do as far as our bond rating? Does this really improve our quality of life? Does it raise our home values? What about talking to teachers in the school system and bus drivers? We got air quality issues. Look what's going on in Bessemer, Michigan. And I'm thinking we already have private delivery systems of marijuana to your doorstep through Nature's Relief, etc. Who knows? So, do we really need to encourage innovators within our community? I know it's going to be a boon as far as, tax income for the village, but for all of those reasons and some unintended consequences that may result from this, I strongly encourage you and your body to possibly think that maybe it's not the best thing for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Can I speak as a resident?
No. You are a council member. You are a resident, yes. You're a resident council member. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, we're moving down the agenda to old business. 7A, residential rental registration and inspection ordinance. Mr. Medora?
I've been working with, because the question was asked, I think, at the last public hearing, how many properties do we have? I think this is only been one asked, or somebody else, about how many rental properties we have. We don't have a finite number yet still, but I did put this out today. I was working on this. We have about 140 properties in the village that are 0% homestead, 0% principal residence exemptions. That's a good indicator of properties that are non-owner owned or occupied. It's not 100% indicator.
Not Italian units.
Not northern Italian units. This does not include this classification, these properties, such as the large Oxford Manor is over up Pontiac and Crawford, where there's 217 units, but that, that's by their building. It doesn't include places like the small places over on Lauk Street where there might be, say, 20 or 30 apartments. This is mostly single family, two family. There's a 4-unit here on Pontiac and West Burdick that is on this list. The one highlighted on page 1, for instance, is the duplex here at Pontiac in West Burdick that Dan Ludwig just built and about a year ago became occupied. One of the thoughts I was talking to Allison today is, if this goes forward, we get something in place like that, seeing how his home was built to the current specs, all inspections and everything, we may register him and not have to do an inspection at that location because it just was issued a clean bill of health, everything is up to date, everything's up meets all codes. So that might be something to consider for new homes or new permitted properties that fall into it. They might not have to then have the inspection. That was one of the things that came up today. So again, how we would go about this if it was implemented, we would try to reach out to these owners and implement that process of trying to get them registered, setting up inspections if in fact we get to that point. I did include the McKenna email memo to you guys as well. The first one-page memo talks about how they would implement it and some of their costs and some of the things that they would see done. Look at that memo, the third paragraph down, it says, according to the ACS, American Community Survey in 2015, there are 540 renter-occupied housing units in the village. I'm not sure where they got that number. Again, it may be because there's 217 units over there at Oxford Manor alone.
Right.
That is a conglomerate of those
And
numbers.
that's a US Census estimate
Yeah.
for 2015.
So again, that would still leave over 300 other units outside of that large complex in the village. And based on the 140 and the non-PREs I have here, now, it's possible and highly probable that there's a duplex somewhere in the village that is still on 100% PRE because people are claiming it as a homestead, and so it didn't hit this list, but I can't imagine there's 150 of them or something like that. There's more than likely is a few. But it just try to give you an idea of where they say the American Community Survey comes up with that number. Oakland County Equalization has provided this other list, but like I said, it doesn't include 4, 5, 6 properties around town that we know are multifamily.
How many were on this list?
140. If you look at the bottom of page 3, there's 141 actually.
Oh, I see.
So this would just give us an idea. Here's what the county, what they have in their system for non-PRE. Again, some of these might be non-PRE because they're owner occupied, but it's their second home. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's a rental property either. All that has to be determined. And that gets determined by us reaching out to mailers and follow-ups, or when somebody calls to do a water bill and has it transferred into their name, we're like, oh, okay, this is rental. That's how we find out about these things. Just to give you an idea of the scope of the units that we may or may have out there. Page 2, there's a highlighted one, and that was just, I wanted to highlight that one to be sure that one was on the list, and that's 0% PRE. So that one is paying proper taxes. So that was the reason that one on the list. I provided an example of the City of Superior Rental Registry application and checklist. Pretty lighter checklist compared to the one that McKenna had provided. The one McKenna provided was very detailed, and I looked at the City of Superior one. The checklist starts on page 3. And it is basically smoke detector section, carbon monoxide detectors, exterior dwelling, talking about foundations and walls and roofs and structures. And then interior dwelling, talking about laundry appliances, dryers and stuff, as well as electrical outlets, living room, kitchen, bathrooms, and then mechanical contractor cleaning, tune the furnace. So that one is much lighter, and it calls into, it addresses some of the issues I think we have talked about.
And that Lapierre's example is a much higher fee.
Yes, it is a higher fee. I just, yes, they have examples where their fee is 125, I think, or they break it down by units, we don't
They
think.
do.
One family unit, 125, two or more families, 125 plus 40 per unit, and common area 40 per space, so just to give an idea of the scope out there. I think the initial concern put forth by you folks was health and safety. We already have the International Property Maintenance Code that Dan, our code officer, deals with for blight issues and things like that when they are brought to his attention, whether it's from somebody else or his own investigation and driving around the village. There have been some cases. There's a gentleman we dealt with in the last few months, last year, remote landlord. He told me how years ago they used to have to, he had to go to court with him several times. We have to make sure we have our ducks in a row when he cites us or something, because the guy will take and go to court. But we're about a year and a half ago or two, when Dan first came back on here, he was driving by the unit, upstairs window was boarded up, and he must assume, he initially assumed, well, it must not be anyone living up there, the house window was boarded up. Wasn't the case. It was someone living in there, and that was a pure violation that he could see right from the street. He did get a hold of the landlord, it was fixed promptly. I know that's a big concern with the chief too, it's a fire code violation. So some of those things he can find with the current property maintenance code. But again, interior items like that, he wouldn't be able to. He would have to have permission, and even some of the examples put forth by our council, the ordinance, we would need permission from the landlord, building owner, tenant to get in. They could deny us that, and we would have to have some strong evidence or reasons to go and get a warrant to go inside. The example of a power panel in a building being outdated or being recalled many, many years or decades ago and still being in a home and not working properly, I think was one of the concerns, obviously, electrical concerns. One of the issues that McKenna had on their pretty long inspection list, it talks about all the wiring being up to code. And that's a bit of a challenge, as already mentioned here. I mean, what does code mean? There's some of these old homes that have knob and tube. Is that, it's okay, I believe, while it's inspected.
Right, and from a zoning standpoint, as long as there hasn't been a change of use,
Right.
that's still.
But is that, was that up to code? I don't know. Maybe the current code calls for this. Well, obviously, then, what do you do then?
Right.
So you'd have to really define those different areas. To what degree of the code are you going to worry? There were spots in there within the McKenna one about furnace and stuff like that. I mean, I think Mr. Clayton even mentioned in one of the meetings where either a furnace or something in the water heater in the basement. There needs to be a floor drain within 4 or 6 feet to meet code. Is that something that we're concerned about because it may be a lot of money just for that one repair or something like that? So if you go forth, you want to decide where you want to draw the line. Where do you want to draw the line? What's your main concern? What's your reason for doing it? We are concerned talking with internally here, the building official or code official or code enforcement. If we go and do an inspection on something and, yep, smoke detector's fine, the wiring panel is updated, everything seems fine in the furnace, and then something happens 6 months later, how much liability have we assumed? You know, so that's all part of the equation. I didn't think it was necessary to have Bob Davis here to talk about those nitty-gritty things, the details, because those will all come to light and be worked in for whatever reason or for whatever process we go through. And then we wanted to talk more broadly about how do we do this, how do we implement it. Initially, as I spoke, or the memo I gave you last meeting, how cost-wise, we're trying to keep the cost low to make it better for the property owners and stuff. But if we have to contract with McKenna to go out and do the inspections, via the memo he showed today, they're like $65 an hour, and it's possible they could get one an hour. So are we going to cover our costs, or are we going to subsidize that cost and only charge a moderate amount? That's all part of the equation. So basically, if you have 200 units, you can kind of do the math. If we have these 140 plus another 60 units out there, we have 200 units, okay, times $40 that we're going to make up the difference between a McKenna inspector and what we charge. Are we willing to absorb that for the greater good? I don't know, maybe. way it would work, I'm told from our building official, Ken LaBelle from McKenna, the place over there where 217 like units, Oxford Manor, you would get an idea, they have 2 units, or 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms, or they have 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms. He would go and look at a few of them, because they're gonna be all kind of cookie cutter to some degree, unless they've changed the building throughout when they're building, and there's different buildings and different design. He would do a sampling. He wouldn't insist on seeing all 217 units. He would get with the building owners and say, all right, all this layout's the same. I looked at 4 of them, none of them have a ground fault, a GFCI in the bathroom, which is required. Do all of those, let me know when you have them done, I'll come back and maybe do a spot check on some to be sure that you've complied, and, you know, so they don't have to go and inspect all 217 like units. That's one way to speed it up, it's one way to get the cost down and make it less intrusive on all the residents. But then the same benefit isn't given by, you know, all these oddball houses out here too, they're gonna have to be looking at every unit. What do we do when we find one of these homes that's not on the list, that is a 2-unit, or perhaps a 3-unit, that someone's claiming a residential, primary residence exemption on? It's not zoned for what they're doing it. That's real problematic when you run across one that's in a single-family zoning district, that's a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom, but it's been that way for 10, 20 years. What do? We can do the inspections and we can try to find out if it's safe, first and foremost, but then what do you do about the non-conforming use? It's hard to determine sometimes. Was it conforming at one time? Were they given a permit 25, 30 years ago that someone said, yeah, go ahead and do this in this zoning? And now we've had 2 or 3 iterations of our zoning ordinance since then that have kind of changed, and different areas of the village are now this way, what they weren't then. So it's hard to go back and force someone's hand to say, yeah, that 3-unit that you bought 10 years ago as an investment is now, that's a single-family unit. That's a tough one to deal with. So a lot to consider. I think the reason this came to light, from what my understanding of it, was a good thought, that it's all based on concern of safety. I don't think any of this come, you know, in a punitive way or to make money. I mean, you guys lowered the amount, or the last iteration of the ordinance was lowered amount for the inspections, trying to keep the cost low, so we can accomplish the goal of getting them registered and having the safety inspections done. Some of the things on the rental inspection checklist, which that McKenna put on with our letterhead on it when it came to me today, so I didn't do that. That thing gets into a lot of detail.
I think, can I just go ahead and jump in?
Yeah, jump in.
Okay, so it might be, you know, a complicated transitional phase, but I think in the long run, what we're gonna be able to accomplish is a lot of preventative, you know what I mean, policies put in with this, because a lot of the homes that are multiple family homes, you know, in a zone where that's not authorized, probably weren't done on any kind of, you know, grounds of safety in the first place, right? So like these were mocked up by people who maybe didn't even have a permit, or wasn't, you know, it wasn't coded the right way to begin with, and those are the ones that I'm very concerned about safety-wise.
Yeah.
Those are the big red flags for me, are the ones in that area. So yes, we're gonna have to figure out what we're gonna do at that time when those are identified.
Yeah, because if you find one, let's say it's a 2-unit, there's 1 or 2 units downstairs and 1 upstairs, the interior stairway has been blocked off. That was one example that she had told us. They go up the stairway and there's wooden over there because you can't go upstairs anymore, because that's apartment B. Well, but then there isn't but 1 exit for the upstairs, and do they need to? I don't know. And so then, well, you're not even supposed to be a multifamily in this area, but you are, but you're not meeting codes. Now we're gonna allow you to put a stairway coming out your side window, or side emergency exit down, you know, 2 feet off your neighbor's property over there because you're here. We can't allow you to keep going unsafely. But do we want to force you now to have another entrance sticking out the side now, coming right down by somebody's bedroom window over there that never did have it? Now they don't like this stairway coming down the bedroom window, but for safety we had to make them do that. So it gets
Sure,
it's tricky.
it's exponential depending on the property. My hope with this, if it goes through at all, is, you know, some of you know I was a firefighter for some time, and when you're entering a space that is in a fire situation and it's dark, you have no idea. I mean, you're going in, maybe you know it's a 2-unit, but the reality is there could be a unit in the basement. And there have been situations like that where everybody has now been evacuated from that building. It's full of smoke, and somebody says, "Oh, well, what about Bob, who lives in the basement?" You know, and so that's the life safety concern. In the meantime, and I've been in plenty of structure fire situations where you don't hear a smoke detector at all because one was never installed in that unit, let alone in the common space, let alone in, you know, the next unit, so that everybody can get out in a timely fashion. That's the concern. And God forbid, and I know we don't like to talk in what ifs, what if, but you know, if something like that ever happened, you know, and somebody should perish in a situation like that, the public's going to blame the fire department, the public's going to blame the zoning, the public's going to blame the authorities that had the bodies that had the authority to make it right. So that's where I'd like to see. I mean, you have chipping paint, well, that's maybe a concern too, especially if you have children in that unit. You should have heat, you should have access to clean water. It should be clean and well kept. And, you know, I would assume that the property owners that are here this evening are the ones that we don't have to worry about, because they're the ones that are engaged. They're the ones that, you know, I see from the photos, it's a beautiful property, you know, but without the registration, without that process being implemented, you know, it's very difficult to tell. You know, unfortunately, it's the old adage, you know, one bad apple ruins the bunch, or whatever, you know. We don't have that many rentals by comparison, but, you know, there's some good examples. You know, we have the Lapeer example. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but there are plenty of examples out there. And so, you know, maybe I think we should rehash the whole thing, start from scratch, is my opinion, and really look at, okay, what examples have we had where there have been situations, you know, what are the needs of our residents who are renters? How can we address those with our existing ordinances? If there are any already on the books, how can we make solutions better with future potential ordinances and kind of go from there? Frankly, the document we started with was a rehash document from a previous council that it didn't go anywhere for a variety of reasons. And so, you know, rather than just pulling it out of the filing cabinet, so to speak, you know, I think we need to almost start from scratch. Sit down with, you know, the fire chief. Sit down with I hate the committee stuff to death, but that's the best way to get things accomplished. Sit down with the fire chief, maybe some landlords, and say, how do we fix this? You know, we know there's concerns. We know that there are units that we didn't even know were units. You know, I'm looking at you. We didn't even know yours was a unit until you went in to come, you know, take your oath and give your address because you decided to serve for council. You know, so what are situations like that? You know, do those units have life safety? You know, are there emergency exits? You know, things like that you know, are make and break. When it's 3 in the morning, it's 20 degrees outside, and smoke is pouring out of the building. You know, that's my concern with all of this. Is that, you know, we have residents in this community that are potentially living in situations that are unsafe.
And I agree, this is about people. We've stated this from the beginning. If people, you know, discuss like what the reason is, and it's not a partisan issue to care about people. And that's what we're doing here. We're taking care of our own, as we should. That's our due diligence. It's not just for the safety of those living in the homes, it's for the safety of our public safety folks who are running into those buildings with absolutely no idea what to expect. But it's also for us, I mean, to know where our people are. And again, you know, I'll emphasize the need to, if we are going to scrub this right back down to ground zero and start over again, the need to possibly expedite that, because really, I was hoping that this would be a mechanism to help us with the census that's going to be starting as soon as April. In fact, I think they're already going to be sending a round of census forms out, and then people are going to be coming door to door in April. So this is something that, you know, gives us the ability as, you know, not just elected officials and administration, but many community stakeholders in predicting infrastructure needs, you know, as far as doing a better risk analysis of who our people are, what their needs are, you know, considering funding opportunities that could come into this community. We don't know, we're gonna miss out on those opportunities if we don't know how many people we have, what that demographic looks like. And the step one is finding our people. And if they're holed up in residences that are unidentified, then that's not doing us any good.
Do we know, Joe, if, I mean, we got the list from the county. We've got the list from, that's this one. We've got the American Community Survey from 2015. Does the US Postal Service have a list?
So I checked to see if I was on the list, like our village did not know my unit was a thing.
Right.
I am on the census list because they use my post code, my address.
As a PO box?
No,
Or
I am
as a
58 and a half.
Okay, so they have your address, so
They have my-
they'll
yeah.
a verified address, so to speak.
So they do have an address for me, so I,
Yeah. Your address is in our system.
yeah, the address.
Yes, you're in our system, at your address, with just the water bill that we've just checked
That's
right out.
probably,
There isn't like 58 and a half.
I guess my point in that is that maybe we already have the list. And you know, frankly, we already have a mechanism to inspect, and that's the International Building Maintenance Code. If a tenant calls the village tomorrow and complains about a situation, that is enough probable cause for a code enforcement officer to enter the property, correct?
If they invited in,
They're invited
that's how it happened in the past. Now, I mentioned that to Attorney Davis, he said, well, they may or may not have the authority to invite them if they don't own the building.
Okay.
And so,
in terms of examples of why we need this, the fire chief has provided plenty of examples. It was in the minutes, it was in the video. We can go over those again if you would like. I shared my story. I'm lucky to have a very wonderful landlord. My unit was converted in about the 70s. The panel was put in, electrical panel, my breaker. It was recalled. They didn't know. This is something that would be caught in these ordinances. When I realized by pure fluke that my breaker box was defective, I brought it to their attention, and to their credit, they absolutely took care of it promptly. When the electricians came in to tear it out, all of those wires were melted. I was that close to going up in smoke. So,
In a unit that
in a unit,
the fire department didn't even know was a unit.
yes. So, and my landlord doesn't know to put me on that list because he did it in the 70s, there is no registration. So, to their credit, they absolutely took care of it, but something like this put in place could prevent a disaster.
It also just discourages bad business. Again, you know, Joe stated that most of the people that are landlords here in the room are doing the right thing.
Well, my hope is that you can say that it's a licensed or registered unit, and that makes it more valuable, you know?
If I was a business owner, I want to do business with slumlords, you know what I mean? So if we're discouraging bad business, I know somebody brought up the economic standpoint, to me, that's good economics, right? Because now we're a more valuable area.
Right. So I feel like we're talking to the audience quite a bit, the public.
Sorry.
And that's okay, but we still need to figure out what direction we need and want to take. And so,
What is it on the old ordinance that we could scrub to salvage some of it in order to
and we don't have a
save some
copy of that
time?
for-
I brought my own from last month, I was on my packet from last month's packet. I think a lot of the ordinance with Bob, and why it got so lengthy, he was really covering all the bases to be sure we were in solid legal ground. I don't think it was more directed towards the practicality of rolling it out and the process of doing inspections. It was, you know, so some of that stuff might not be able to be scrubbed. I think it's more of the checklist we end up with, I think will help a lot. I say, you have pretty good extremes here, you know, the one that we kind of sent today, and then the one that City of Lapeer has. We could probably, maybe not have to throw out that whole ordinance, maybe just say, all right, it works good on sections 1 through 9, the legal bullets that we have to hit. 10, 11, 12, when it comes out to nitty gritty about doing the inspections, maybe we could scale that down some and come up with a checklist that's more appropriate for what you're desiring. Could maybe start there.
Chief, one question for you is, you know, the jurisdiction having authority. mechanisms do you have in place already where you can do pre-incident planning in multiple family units?
As of right now, for a regular house that somebody's converted into a 2-bedroom or 2-unit, 3-unit, 4-unit, I have no means of whatsoever of registering it without knowing that they've done it. I can't just walk up to the door, knock on the door, and go in and do an inspection. It would have to be, one of the tenants would have to call and make a complaint, or the only other way we would have any issue is if we were there on a call for a medical or something and we saw conditions that were extreme, life-threatening or safety or something, that we can report it back to the building official to say, this place is, got all kinds of issues with it, something needs to take place.
And for like a larger property, multiple units?
Units on Crawford Street, by code, they have to be inspected, quote, but all we are allowed to inspect, technically by the code, we go in, we can inspect the hallways, make sure they've got the fire extinguishers, the smoke detectors that they do have in the hallways, we can check, we have to check the emergency lighting, that they still work, exit lighting, that's the only thing that we have any means, the public spaces is all we're allowed to check in there. I mean, they would have to invite us in to go through every single unit. I mean, we've had calls in there, again, it's the same thing when we get in there, including one of the calls there, there was a fatal there a couple years ago, and there was no working smoke detector inside. The smoke detectors were there, but the batteries are pulled out. And/or the detectors were old, I mean,
Old
because
enough.
technically,
Expired, yeah.
smoke detectors are only good for 10 years. If they're over 10 years old, they should be thrown out and new ones put in because they don't work anymore. They just, all the grease, oil, stuff in the air, plugs them up on the inside so they don't work properly, and plus the batteries. And new batteries all have to be the 10-year lithium battery that goes in them anyhow right now, so they should be, changed out. So again, we find those kinds of stuff that are in there.
That's a requirement, the 10-year thing?
I'd like to say something.
You have to be wired in directly or buy the one with the non-replaceable 10-year battery.
Yep.
I'd like to say something. In regards to smoke detectors, it's notorious. They take them off. They cook on the stove, they smoke it all up, they go off, they take out the batteries, they take them off and leave them off. Are we responsible for that?
Again, the current
I mean,
ones,
when you-
those aren't allowed to be, those would meet current code. Current code is a hardwired one or one that's a non-replaceable
Both.
10-year battery.
Both. They take them all off.
Okay,
They unplug them.
well, you can't stop
With
that.
the 10-year battery, you can't take the battery out.
Yeah, but
Why
he's saying they
not?
might still just take it off and go have it covered and then
They take it off and throw it in the
So-
back room.
Part of the installation on them too is making sure they're installed properly, because, and again, you don't want a smoke detector in the kitchen anyhow, because they're gonna continually go off, and the same things, you don't put a smoke detector in the bathroom because of the steam continually
All
sets
right,
up.
but
So if you get a smoke detector in the bedroom where it's actually gonna do something for the people, or, back in the living room, away from the kitchen, then it shouldn't be an issue.
But the hard wires are plugged in, they unplug them, and it's not really wired, it's
They're
plugged.
not foolproof.
And they take them out all the time.
But they save lives.
Absolutely.
They do save lives.
Oh, I know they do. But how do you get them to make them leave them alone?
You can't.
That's probably never any better.
That's probably a clause. That's a
You're not gonna
clause in
Like
the
light
lease.
bulbs,
That's
they
a
take
clause in
those
the
too.
lease.
Yes.
I think I like, the Lapeer application is solid. I think it's a great example that we could replicate. And as far as, making any amendments to the current ordinance that we have in front of us, I would rather go that route personally, than starting from scratch, just in the interest of saving time and energy on this, because it's been, introduced before.
And this is the parts that ours was missing. Ours was the ordinance.
Yeah.
And this was, okay, the registry and application and checklist. That's the part we hadn't quite got to yet anyway, so this was a good example.
Can I ask you a question real quick? Do any of you landlords own properties in other communities with a similar registration process?
Nope.
With what?
Do you own any properties in another community? Because
I've been in Pontiac's registration process.
Okay,
It's a disaster.
okay.
One thing I
Well,
like,
Pontiac's a disaster.
if you're gonna make an ordinance, I wouldn't try to design an ordinance on your worst example and try to make everybody live to that. And them rare occasions.
Look around at other cities that have the ordinances and try to go kind of in the middle.
Yeah, that's what we're looking for.
Just one question I had is basically, if we're focusing on just rentals, what's the difference between, I have 6 kids and I bought a house and we're all packed in there. I mean, wouldn't this apply to every single
Everyone.
resident?
That's what I'm thinking.
No, it's private property rights, it's not public housing. You know, there's a difference between, when you go and rent at a public space that the public can rent versus your own private property, what you want to do with your own.
When you-
There is some difference there.
Move into a home, you normally have a home inspection as well. If you move into a rental, I believe you deserve the same expectation of safety, but you don't know the last time it was ever inspected.
Well, is Dan here?
I'm sorry?
A code enforcement guy? No,
Yeah.
he's not.
You want to give him these because he's missed the one on the corner several times and you can look at it.
Well, I'll speak to you about that.
That
Please
board
email
is
me.
falling down.
Just please email me. That way I have your contact information.
Okay, that'll work.
Okay?
And if you need any help in anything,
And we can sit on the board.
Right, and to be fair, I mean, there's a lot of properties that have situations pending on them, so it's not that Dan doesn't see problems, he does, but there's a process, and there's a due process. I know, but I've heard that before from other folks, and
And they're looking at their list of code enforcement at a meeting, knowing that enforcement action is being taken, and somebody
Right.
stand up in a meeting and say, well, nothing's been done.
right, and
Again, because they
yeah,
don't
we're not
know.
gonna, and out of
And that
respect
makes
for
sense.
privacy, we're not gonna,
Yeah.
speak to individual cases.
it's very difficult to get a personal residence updated to those things anyways. I'm sure
Yeah.
it's 10 times harder.
And again, the International Property Maintenance Code will still apply to them. If Dan goes by and sees a gutter falling down, he can still send a notice saying he must do this. He sent out letters to about 26 properties about a year ago, I think it was last March, about peeling paint. It's flaking paint, it's this and that, yes, it's in the winter, try to have that done by July 1. And I don't think he had to go back to any of them and address it. So,
Council, do we have anything further on this topic? The only reason I ask is we do have a lot of ground to cover, a lot of
Yes.
discussion to cover.
Go ahead. Let's go with you.
I think no matter what we do, I do want to add an appeal process.
Okay.
So for instances like moving the drain from, 4 feet, whatever, so we can use our brains. And if
Yeah.
someone ever did go, even an overzealous inspector, we can put a safeguarding against, that would be silly to move a drain like that. That's not life safety, that's not what we're looking
right,
for.
right, that's a plumbing code,
Yeah,
again.
I mean, yeah.
So, and that was mentioned from McKenna too, that property owners should have a right to review process should be put in place and clearly communicated from the outset. So, yeah.
I appreciate all the work that McKenna has been providing, or doing in order to provide us with a lot of this information and background. I'm a little hesitant to get into contracting. I think that the cost won't merit, the efforts here based on our budget. And I know that we've got really capable people in the room right now that have done these inspections in the past. I'm not trying to inflict unrealistic workload on these individuals, but I just want to kind of inquire, Chief, if I can, what does that process look like with you, like when you typically do an inspection? And then if we implemented, this, what would that do to your capabilities as far as being able to get these done?
We would have to obviously have to schedule, then obviously the guys are, it's inconvenient, we run calls during the day.
Yeah.
People have emergencies and everything like that, we don't just be able to go out for the full day and do things. And again, it would be my guys going into, I'm not looking at trying to add a fee to anything right now. My inspections that we do annually on all the commercial buildings, technically, we're tasked that we have to inspect them every commercial factory, store, whatever, we have to do it. So it's a matter of we schedule them, our guy goes in there. We don't get paid for it. We don't get anything extra for it. The only thing I have issues with them is when I go back 3 or 4 or 5 times and they haven't done what they're supposed to do, then I've got issues with it. But otherwise, we go, we don't get paid for them. If we added to it, my goal in the first place would be just to get a registry of them. Once I get a registry of them, I can build that database and put them our NDCs in our trucks, so I know when that address comes up, boom, it's a 3-unit building, it's a 2-unit building. Plus it gets built in the premise at dispatch, so that must, when dispatches it to, 123 Main Street, you have a fire all of a sudden, and they would come back and say, well, again, realize that is a 3-unit building or a 4-unit building or something, so that we have that information as we're driving up to the building. That stuff would be built into it. And then after that, it would be a matter of like, when a unit is ideally emptied out, or a tenant moves out, before a new tenant is allowed to come in, at that point, then it should be inspected before somebody comes back in, as opposed to, knocking on every single door and trying to, go in and inspect every single thing.
So my thought process is obviously just, continuing to invest in the competency of our own and save some money, because I guarantee you we could do it for less cost in-house than, contracting with McKenna. And then eventually, I think obviously we're gonna get to a point where we need to discuss bringing on a code enforcer, maybe full-time in the next budget. But I think at this point, just looking at our capabilities, it would be feasible, and then obviously we can compensate based on, the demand and things like that, so.
So your primary immediate concern is that registration
We'll get
list?
the database built so we know what's out there available. And then after that, it's like being able to go in, once it's emptied out, before it gets reoccupied, do a quick inspection. Fire department side, also I'm looking at is I'm going in there to make sure that I can, it's safe going up the stairs, if they're up the stairs, whatever, that I can get into there. Does it have working smoke detectors and, per code into the bedrooms and everything? Does it have a CO detector in them? Other than that, again, I don't want to make sure there's not electrical cords draped all over the place, or, I've had instances like that where there's, an elderly couple living in an apartment and they ran the entire thing off of 3 power strips. That was their electrical for the whole apartment. But again, it's, I hate to use it as a bad example and keep saying, that's why we're doing it. But when you get somebody like that, it's a commercial business, they're charging them $800, $900, $1,000 to live in an apartment like that, I got an issue with it. I mean, I would, put my child in there, and I wouldn't think anybody else would put their own children into that same situation, so.
See, that's another thing of overkill. Every time somebody moves, they want to re-inspect. You have somebody move out in 10 months, they passed an inspection in 10 months, now you gotta pay for another one 10 months later. That's overkill.
Not unless they tore the smoke detectors out and they tore the batteries out, that's
Can
why I
we
make sure.
take
they're back
like
in there.
time-dated
We're talking
pictures?
landlords that are like the drivers on the road. 99% are good. You can't paint the same people with the same brush. And that's what they're always trying to do. They exaggerate everything. That's like putting up stop signs. The magic number is 80. Every time, how many times have you heard in your life, they go 80 miles an hour down through here? Well, that's a bunch of crap. They don't go that fast.
All right, thanks, Chief, for those comments. Anything further from council? I mean, it almost sounds like we need to, based on Chief's comments, simplify it by quite a bit. Like, we need to know where they're at, we need to know they have working fire, life safety systems.
The other things to do, they usually, I don't know if code enforcement would be able to have the expertise to go and look at fuse panels and stuff like that and know. They would perhaps look at it, maybe write some numbers down and come back and check to see, is it current, is it outdated or whatever. I'm not sure if their code enforcement guy is qualified to do some of those inspections.
Right.
On the fire end, Dan used to do fire inspections, he did it in Pontiac for years, but that was in that lane. He wasn't getting into furnaces or electrical panels and things like that. So I think you're gonna need somebody with maybe not a certified building official, like McKenna even noted, that they have someone else a little below that, perhaps. Again, and if it's someone we hire part-time or hire someone, hey, you can work for us for 1 season and do our inspections for us as our employee, that might be a way to do it. If you don't want to go to McKenna, it's their cost, it's a lot.
It is.
Working Dan,
Yeah.
$15 an hour.
It's just, and I mean, at that point, if we had to do something contracted, then we're looking at up in, the registration application, we're trying not to do that,
Yeah.
so let's avoid that at all costs.
Yeah.
And just, if we have to simplify, great, but I think the sooner we can get Chief that list and start implementing this, it's something that can always be amended if if
And
something.
we could even proactively start, as we're talking, if we know some landlords come in and pay, we know Mr. Clayton, we know where your properties are, we could at least, we know where your properties are, we know where the other landlord properties are, we can say, all right, at least have a list, we know it's a rental, and make a note of it, and then share that with the fire department, at least we know it's a rental. Probably most of them he already does.
I think they know all of them anyway,
Right.
probably.
Yeah, we'd like to know all the rentals anyway, so as
I
we
got
come
a
in.
list of them in front of you.
Well, again, it's not an exact list, and we do have several people that come in and pay their water bill, we know the renters. We have several people, landlords that call and say, my renter paid the water bill, no, then shut them off. So we know who the landlords, and that's the rental situation. We know we get a lot of calls when people are calling and change the phone or the water bill into their name as a new tenant. So we can start building a list even on that. We can start,
So how are we gonna simplify this if the version that Mr. Davis gave us.
I think the ordinance might not be too bad. The ordinance we could look at, as long as it covers us legally.
Yeah, I
It's the
don't wanna take-
process of the application and the inspection, I think we need to make sure it's simple.
Well, I just don't want to simplify it to the extent where,
Right. It's useless.
yeah,
It has, right, it's
We're
got to
going in,
serve
we should do it
its
right.
purpose, and we have to make sure that we're covered from the legality side of this. So I don't want to, I mean, if we need to simplify, we can do that, but I don't know how many extra,
I think some things,
filler we
I
have in here.
think some things could be taken off the McKenna, and I'm in favor of the Lapeer one with some tweaks. And I think we need
But I
to
think the way the ordinance is drafted, it references the International Building Maintenance Code. So,
It does.
we have to change,
But we could say, or a list derived from.
right, exactly.
because I do want to
Life
protect,
safety sections, whatever they are.
there's going to be a lot of apartments that are non-conforming simply because of their age. I mean, look at our village, it's old homes. It's going to be some quirky things.
Like on the Lapeer one, interior dwelling, the interior dwelling including but not limited to appliances and other structures. It talks about in the area of the cellar, basement, and laundry, appliances such as dryer, furnace, hot water tank are code compliant. Dryer vents, smooth bore piping, not complex tube, basement stairs are structurally sound, free from defects and deterioration. So some of that stuff is simple, but yet, yeah, free from defect. It's gotta be working properly. Someone's got to ensure that it's working properly. Electrical appliances, furnaces, and things like that.
In terms of chipping paint, I know that's something we discussed. Could we, I don't know, the age of the home, because I know you know that year, and I know that year.
1978, there's already regulation on some of that, if a contractor's doing work in a pre-1978 home, they have to follow certain
Okay, or we could
parameters.
simply do a lead test if it's not.
Right, and yeah, that's like a whole other avenue, but, most children get well visits where they're tested, and if it's above a certain amount, that automatically triggers a health department response. I like the list derived from, so maybe we take a look at what those possible. I think maybe what would be helpful is we look at the draft ordinance and we look at the International Building Maintenance Code side by side. I don't think we've seen all of that. We've seen what the ordinance references, but I'd like to see that too.
Okay, so are we making any motions on this?
No, not this evening.
One quick thing, the village does have a copy of the property management code is here, they're required by law to have it here, because if they adopt the ordinance, they have to have
Right,
it. So they can come to the front desk and.
We can make a copy.
Or make page copies of
Pretty
it.
thick
Or
book.
take a picture of your phone or whatever you need.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they're big old books that they charge you a
Yeah,
bunch of money for.
yeah, exactly.
There may be some copyright issues with it.
Pretty thin, the property management one.
So are we sending this back to Mr. Davis with the
Well,
recommendations?
I don't know if we need to send it all the way back to Mr. Davis.
Explain to him kind of where you're at, where to go with, A, make sure the ordinance is sufficiently legally sound.
Right.
But then not overburden areas, and then,
Well, what we need to do is quite literally have a markup session where we all have red pens, we have the document in front of us, and this is what we need to change. So I think it's gonna take another meeting like this.
Could Chief come help us with marking up things? Sorry.
I have nothing else to do.
I know you have nothing else in your life, but I do want to make sure we're focused
Yeah, I
on.
mean, my 2 cents is we send too much stuff to Mr. Davis.
yeah.
It's not his job to write legislation for the village of Oxford. It's our job. Let's get it where we need it. Because what we've done in the last year, unfortunately, is it comes to this meeting and we bicker about chickens, and then it goes back to Mr. Davis, and then it comes back, and then it goes back, and we do that 5, 6 times. We're spending money on some of that, and maybe we could just, I'm thinking we could be more efficient.
Yeah, like I said, I think the ordinance itself is sound, but his concern was sound legal ground.
Yep.
When you're doing these, for accessing the properties and stuff, that was his goal, or his objective, I think, is making sure that part of it. We can work on the practicality part of it.
So
I want to
set up
review,
another workshop for like this, what would be the second meeting in February? What would be the,
I'm looking at,
and And I can perhaps have some update memos or updated info at the first February meeting, but
So a regular council meeting on the 11th, the special one would be scheduled, workshop would be scheduled on the 25th.
And just so you know, 17th is President's Day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would care, but...
Hey, can we work faster than that? Can we have a work session next Monday,
The 3rd?
the 3rd?
I was here, I'm out of town all this week.
Okay.
It's kind of crucial.
And then following, as a matter of fact, so next week, Terry's gonna be working on council packets by herself. Get them out.
Okay.
The only thing we can do, the 10th then is the Monday before the council meeting. That's not cramming yet, but,
Or if you're gonna meet the next day though.
No, that's too much.
yeah.
We are unpaid volunteers after all. Yeah, I'd say let's look at that, you know, maybe the, God, that's a whole month away.
Which one? Which date?
Tuesday, the 25th.
If you want the week before that, I don't know what Wednesdays are like, or the 8th or something.
18th would be the Tuesday after the federal holiday, 19th, Wednesday.
Planning commission.
Yeah, we gotta avoid the planning commission on Tuesdays.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, we could try to get something to the council meeting, or at least a review, at least watch it, you know, to check it.
Yeah, can you just
Comment at the 11th.
send, yeah, let's do it that way. Comments on the 11th.
Yeah.
Have it on the agenda again on the
Yep.
11th, in case, you know, so we can.
Maybe have some
make changes.
progress, maybe by then to show you.
And a commitment from council members to red line, you know, mark up on your own time.
So the next meeting is on the 11th?
The next regular meeting, yep. All right, any other discussion? Okay, moving on to,
Can I just add something? You were talking about the electrical panel and everything else. Landlords typically don't change out the electrical panels unless there's a problem. Usually it's a fire, or something like that. But you would know that landlord would had a problem.
I believe it was put in when my unit was converted.
Okay. But there was no permit pulled on yours.
It was, I mean, it was done a long time ago. I don't know if we know if they were supposed to.
My point is I don't think you would have to do a full inspection on every house every year if it flipped like that, if a new renter came in. You could do like a 5-year main inspection or a 10-year main inspection and then.
right, and once you have the list, you can check the list against, you know, building permits and see what has been done and when,
Yeah.
you know?
I think we did talk about doing it, every 3 years,
Yeah, we were never looking towards an annual one.
yeah. I know that wasn't discussed tonight, so.
Yeah, because I've had a renter in one of mine for 28 years. So, and we've done updates
Sound
to
like
it,
a-
but it's
That's
crazy.
gonna come
I'm
over
telling
5
you,
years.
it's crazy, but yeah.
Oh.
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you. Thank you for everybody who had comments on that topic. Right, moving on to CDBG Public Service Project Snow Removal.
Terry found out some information, I think, also, and I know Kate went down and found some information, but anything new? We're read on that?
No, I just provided some information in the packet that identifies what it would fall under. The public service projects are, we can reserve up to 30% of what we get allotted each funding cycle, which is roughly $11,000. So it's anywhere between $3,100 to $3,500 for the public service projects. And again, the way the cycle runs, the next approval period will be in October of this year for project year 2021. And those funds won't be released until the following December. So that's kind of where we're at. Everything else has been dedicated. I think the next cycle we have Haven.
Oh, well, no, because we're 2 years behind, yeah.
Federal government delay.
Yeah.
And I thought when we first talked about this, one of the stumbling blocks was that if we, as the village, pay for some sort of program, then that puts the liability on us. Is that correct? Did I understand?
Probably so, because I know when we talked in the car that day, we had her in Chair's office on speaker, and she said a lot of communities, if they have a senior center or that provides senior services, or somebody, somebody like a Haven or a Fish that does this type of work, you contract with them, you give them the money, they do the work. She said, if you don't have that, then it falls on you.
So who in our community, what community partners or service organizations could
I don't know any.
assist a snow removal situation?
It couldn't just be something that we contract with a local snow removal business and then the liability falls on them?
Yes, the difference is contracting them, just giving them the money they have.
Right, and it'd have to be contractual.
Or we do it in-house and we contract it out to the actual end user, a real contractor that's performing the work.
Yeah, I don't think, it was never really my intention to do it in-house.
Yeah.
I just don't think that we have the resources to do
I
that.
don't think, when I say in-house, it's not in-house, our personnel shoveling. In-house would be now, we have to put out the bid, we have to take the bids, we come on in and we hire them, we develop the plans, so, okay, when are you gonna show up? Who qualifies, all of that, then come to us versus, hey, Fish, here's $3,000, go shovel some snow.
Right.
That's the
When
difference.
yeah.
When I say bring it in-house, I don't mean us doing the actual shoveling, it's the DPW staff. But we'd be in our house to go through the contracting and set up the program and stuff like that.
We have to do all the paperwork. Whoever qualifies has to be identified, so you have to set the parameters. Is it going to be senior citizen? What defines a senior citizen? Is it anybody over 55? Do you want to do disabilities? Is there an income requirement? Because generally, senior citizens don't have an income because they're retired, so therefore they qualify. You don't have to go through all that, hassle of qualifying their income. However, there's a lot of senior citizens that make more in retirement than most of us do that who are working right now. So, you do have those out there. So it's how are you going to identify who is going to receive the service? And then are you going to be able to find a company or is it just going to be strictly sidewalks? Is it going to be sidewalks to driveways? Is it going to be up their walk to their front porch? Is it going to be salting and shoveling? Is it,
So I talked to someone a couple days ago. He's retiring from plowing, so he has no interest in our contract. But he told me, what he was, if he was to submit a bid, he'd do about $30, $35 for, we don't have big driveways here, for the sidewalk, driveway, and, the steps. And that would be about 15 pushes a year, he said. So he was thinking if we have 35, maybe 50 homes, that would be about $5,000 for us.
And that's more than we have.
Yeah, and he was saying that, to make sure they're insured, because his insurance will cover if someone falls.
Anybody working for us would have to be insured, we document that, that's.
Do we know how many, we haven't had much snow this year yet. If you look at Facebook, you think the world is coming in because we have the snow ordinance. But do we have an idea of, offhand, I'm sure there's a list somewhere, how many, last year versus this year, snow ordinance violations?
Well, let's see, last year was the first year we started this, we got that snow early, right?
Right.
So that was like in November of 18.
I tallied all that up, that was in the report. I had to submit it because I submitted our ordinance officer program, and so I had to go in and total all that stuff up. It was a big pain in the backside, but I can get the information.
Okay.
It's on the spreadsheet.
Because the reason I ask, anecdotally, it seems that there's more and more compliance. For example, this last snow, I came home, my sidewalk was already done. So was that sidewalk, that entire block.
We didn't do it.
You didn't do it. The DPW didn't do it. The DPW was put a bunch of snow at the end of my driveway, but that's how physics works, We got out there and we moved it, but the sidewalk was already done. You know, so is it one of those things where because this new ordinance is in place, that neighbors are being more neighborly? And again, I can only speak to the sidewalk that I can see, that I do, but it seems to me that there's more and more sidewalks clear. And also, I should say that, you know, I saw on, I point to my phone because the community forum, you know, somebody had posted their letter, their warning, and was all up in arms about it. But the reality is depending on how that snow falls, you know, Dan's not, if it's a Wednesday night,
There was a lot of.
you have until 7 PM the next day. 7 PM the next day is a Thursday, the village offices are closed, you now have all of Thursday, all of Friday, all of Saturday, all of Sunday. Dan comes in at what, Monday? It drives around, looks at everything and, you know.
Then he comes back and says, well, what's wrong?
He comes back and he sends letters on Monday afternoon or Tuesday, you've had a week.
And then,
You know,
it's a solid
some-
week before he shows up.
Right. So some of the folks, I think, are complaining just to complain.
Yes,
You
it was
know?
like 2 weeks in the snow to where they got a ticket.
The reason we have this in place is because we have residents who are disabled, who need to walk their children to the bus stop and shouldn't have to be burdened by that snow. We have people who are in wheelchairs that shouldn't have to be burdened by that snow. We have business owners, you know, that don't comply, you know, that own, you know, expensive downtown properties that don't comply. And so I think that some of this is, let's just keep seeing how it's going. You know, in 50 years, we're not gonna worry about snow anyways. And so, unfortunately, but I make a joke of it, but this year has been less snow than last year.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, maybe we keep track of the numbers. I'm just thinking out loud for discussion. Let's keep track of the numbers, keep track of the enforcement, and if it seems like there is more of a need, and frankly, I challenge, you know, our service organizations, you know, where's our Boy Scouts, where's our, you know, our various clubs to say, hey, you know, our senior citizens, you need help, let us know. You know, like, at some point, the village has certain authorities, but at the end of the day, we're a community, and we should all be looking out for each other, and if your neighbor's not shoveled, just shovel it for them. I mean, it's that simple. And so I guess my stance is, you know, let's continue to see how it goes, and if we need to adopt a program in the future, that's something we can do.
I think it all sounds good in theory, but the problem, again, with volunteers is it's not reliable, and if we were to even promote organizations that were willing to help, we can't promote that on a webpage, because then that puts the liability back, as I understand it, on us, right? Because people are gonna think that we have some kind of contractual relationship with those organizations, or, to me, it's not about, you know, shaking a damning finger at the people that are capable of shoveling that don't shovel. Well, shame on them, you know, they'll be cited, and then they'll complain on Facebook. We can handle that. Really, I want to make sure, even if it's only with the $3,000 that we have, I want to look at that and say, how many residents can we service then? And then look at it on a case-by-case basis, because I know I can count on 2 hands the number of residents that I know personally that have either disabilities, that live alone, that are elderly, that, you know, again, like we had the example of a woman that came in and told us about the young woman who had just moved here and she was pregnant. On her first day, she got a citation. It's just things like that where I'm like, it could have been prevented. We have the funds. We could figure out a way to provide this service, and I think that even if it starts real small, having the ability to say that we have a program in place is gold when snow falls and people come to us and say,
For the most vulnerable.
for the most vulnerable residents, we should have something in place. I
That's
stand
the
firm
thing,
on
that's the
that.
tricky part, how do you
It's the
decipher
definition
that?
of most vulnerable.
And I think that's, again, we are gonna have to review, or develop some kind of board or process in order to determine what that looks like. And I think that obviously seniors would be prioritized, and that disabled, you know, residents would be prioritized. And then anything else would be a case-by-case basis or implemented into a lottery system. Because if, you know, we're gonna have to come up with a number of,
Yeah, if you only got enough to handle 18
Right.
homes in a year and there's 44 people that want them, you know, you can, how do you pick
and then
and
that's when we have to pick which cases are the most
choose?
severe.
Raise the bar eventually until you pare it down to those you have enough money to go over, I don't know. Or you have 18 or 20 or 30 homes that get shoveled the first time, but you don't have money for the second time. if you have a bad winter, you know, or the 8th time, whatever it takes, you're gonna burn through the money perhaps. This year we probably wouldn't.
Right.
It was pretty easy.
So
Yeah.
perhaps it's a question for Bob. But how do we, is there a chance that we get sponsorships for this program?
Two different things. One's the CDBG money.
Through, yeah, obviously.
The other one would be a standalone thing you're talking about doing yourself. Yeah, you know, if you had somebody in place, let's say we had DPW guys ready to will to shovel, never gonna happen. But we want people who want to pay for that, we could take that money in specifically for that and use it to pay for those. You could do the same, I would imagine, with donate money for this, and we'd have to spend that money on that, possibly. The
Say, like,
CDBG.
sponsor a family, sponsor a.
But see, here's the thing about that. They don't need us to do that. They could go to a company and say, you know what, I want to give you $500. And I know 5 people on my street, I'd like you to shovel the driveways, pay for them, and cut us out of the middle of it.
Well, maybe something like large organizations like churches, I could do that, but most people that live in the village probably barely have the means to pay for their own personal shoveling, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you get somebody once in a while that says, you know,
That sounds like a great act
I
of
just want to help
goodwill,
someone
but-
down the track.
right.
Well, I'm saying, if somebody wanted to do that, they
Sure.
don't need us to do it.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Yeah, no, and
They
I
can do it without us
understand.
and without us.
The
doing it.
process is,
You know, then they would, some people will say, well, I just want to give you 500, you take care of it for me. Okay, that happens too.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if we already had something in place, then that would even make it easier for them to do that.
yeah, I'm not trying to harp on this, and I know we could argue it to death, and I want to move forward, but I want to continue emphasizing that we should explore options such as that, because I do think that the money could be utilized in service that would be extremely beneficial to our most vulnerable residents, and that's a priority for me.
So surely by 2021, which I know the money doesn't get released in 2022, we can get something, at least bare minimum lottery system.
Or or criteria.
Or, yeah, have panel.
Because a lot of times CDBG funds, you know, they're done by census tract, and it's based on income. Well, let's say you have an area that it's not a low line area, but you want to pave a road. Well, you can still use CDBG funds if you get the other one on that road to cough up their financial information, and then if we determine whether that road still qualifies or not. Get people to cough up their financial information isn't always easy. Now, on a one-on-one basis, you might be able to go to an individual and say, all right, you know, Mrs. Smith, you're 87 years old, you have heart trouble. We might qualify that enough, but someone could be healthy and which is low income too. So there's two different ends of the spectrum you're trying to help.
We can always implement
You
like a
can
point
say,
system or something.
if she,
that would
you can say, you
help
know, buy
determine.
this, kind of like when you apply for a tax exempt or property exemption in your community where you live. You have to provide all kinds of documentation, your taxes and any income from people living in your home. That whether they're friends or relatives, doesn't matter, in order to qualify for that benefit of a property exemption. We could have something similar that said, all right, you provide us the documentation that, you know, now we realize you're living on 18,000 a year, Social Security is it, then, okay, you're healthy as a horse, but you're, you know.
Could it be something where it's just like through a point system, and we run them
Yes.
through a basic vetting process of, are you one of these? And if
Yes.
they click yes, then obviously it gets them to the point where it's in front of a review panel.
As long as those criteria fit the CDBG's
Yes.
eligibility.
Yeah.
And so Berkeley does a snow removal program, and they charge $5 a removal for their residents. That's
How much
obviously
is that for Berkeley to come here?
It's obviously, yeah, right? That's obviously subsidized by whatever means where it's CPG, I'm the word for that, I'm sorry.
I screwed
Say
up.
that
Figure
one-
block grants,
Block grant, there you go.
Block grant.
CD.
So we use 3,000,
Yeah.
and then if we do the $5 a push, $5 whatever.
Yeah, you could have like a copay.
Subsidize it, yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, that would nick some of the cost off, and then even with low income or something like that, it's affordable, right? You're
Yeah.
making it affordable and accessible, and that's
'Cause if
more
they-
than we have now.
If they call John Snow Removal Service, he's gonna say, yeah, it's $60, because they gotta drive 10 miles over there to do it. You
So
know?
like
And
more
then
like a
also might be,
subsidized.
if we have what, just like our trash, we have a better trash pickup, just because it's all together.
Mhm.
So if we could say they're all in a 1 mile radius, we have X amount of homes, we get a better price that way too.
It's doable, we just have to prioritize it, and it would have to be the will of the council
The
to
system.
make that their desire on how we use those funds.
Right. And again, talking about efficiency, like I spoke a few moments ago, like, let's start with a blank page and look at a number of examples. Let's look at Berkeley, let's look at others that do this and figure out, okay, what seems to work in those programs, what doesn't. Let's build the program and then, go from there.
But let's have that in place before we have to make the decision on where we use those funds for the next,
You can always reprogram them too, I mean, because you program them so far out in advance, you're always gonna pick your 30% out of assuming, or that you're gonna put aside for public service. Where are we doing that? For this, that, fish, other. This is another purpose of public service, then you're gonna, yes, you have to determine and say it up front, right? It doesn't mean that down the road, you can't maybe switch, I know we switched other funds.
And it just requires more work, public
Yeah.
hearing,
When does this money have to be allocated?
22,
This would be October of this year.
Do we have to-
I can bring this back to you, and you can say, yes, we want to reserve for project year 2021, we select snow removal for, a certain class of residents. And then that would get submitted to CDBG. And then from there, we would have to I would have to get quotes from preferably 3 different companies that would say, they're going to provide the service for X amount of dollars. So all of that would have to be worked out. And then that would be assigned or awarded to one of those vendors in March, April
I
timeframe?
think so.
Yeah.
For the
So,
following 12
so they
months.
give you some time to line those things up, and then, so you'll say, yes, this is the project we want, and this is our pool of candidates, and we select candidate A, because they're gonna provide, salting and whatever.
And could we make everything more efficient by not doing that? By building a program and funding it through our normal budget process,
Yes.
potentially?
Well, because that's a lot of hoops and loops and hurdles.
It's a lot of paperwork.
And yes, yes. Yeah, if you said, you know what, we just want to spend $3,000 a year out of our budget, and you could do that, and you could have it done. for
You
less.
don't think people are gonna be in an uproar that we're using
People are
taxpayers'
gonna be
dollars?
up for no matter what we do.
Because the goal would be to use.
If there's
federal
one thing
money
I've
anyway.
learned in this, is that no matter what you do, half of this town already hates you. That's a fact.
Choose your half.
It's just choose your
People,
half,
well, that's what I'm
you
saying,
know?
like, that's my argument though, like, you think people are gonna offer to shovel their neighbor's walkway, and I guarantee you, if we start allocating funding out of our
The problem.
general fund,
But still gotta meet the
we're not gonna
criteria.
hear the end of it.
Still
Let's
gotta
start a
meet the criteria.
GoFundMe page.
I mean, yeah,
Because the problem then is gonna become is, oh, my neighbor got theirs shoveled, why isn't mine being shoveled? And, you already have, no matter what we do, people.
I'm all on board if you want to consider funding
Streamline
it
it.
through our budget. I'm all on board, I would be a yay vote for that, but, I think let's just, I want to have something in place, and I don't care if that program starts itty bitty small, and helps 3 people in our village, then if we're helping 3 of our vulnerable residents, then we've done something more than we did the previous year. So if it's not through the block grants, let's have that discussion and start building that program,
And we earmark
For next year.
fines for snow violations for those purposes.
There you go.
So your snow violation fine will
Goes
go
to-
to help,
I love it.
assist those. who
You're gonna see a correlation, why price increase? Hands real up, they're shaking.
Yeah.
Again, we could talk,
Okay.
we could go in circles all night.
Yeah, I feel-
What's council's, we got anything, was there a comment that I see a hand over there?
Can't we have like a public partner, or a partnership with the schools, with all those youngsters?
They don't even show their sidewalks, so,
Yeah.
They're playing Wii games and stuff.
yes, I said that publicly, so. Put that
It's a
on.
nice thought, though.
No, it's a nice thought, yeah, and there are, National Honor Society and other groups that do require volunteer hours.
The
So-
churches do.
Churches do as well.
Require
They
it.
like to do them more about.
I think we do both. I think we encourage
Right, I
volunteer
think we
organizations.
just got to draft the program, this is what we want to accomplish. what's our vision? Who's gonna help us get to that vision? How we're gonna fund it?
And if we know about it, because there are lots of organizations that different people belong to. I mean, I don't know if a press release in the papers or, on Facebook or whatever, it seems like we could mobilize help for specific addresses.
We could do more.
It just kind of floors me because you're out here in a small community, you have small walkways, you have small driveways. I live out in acreage, and when we get snow, neighbors come by and plow each other out. I mean, you come home and it's not a small driveway, it's 75 feet long. And there's just more of a sense of taking care of your neighbor out in the country.
It's a country
And you get
mentality.
more in the city, and people just don't pay attention to, like they
Guys, your
should.
trucks are like toys too, so
Yeah.
that's part of it.
Like, I get to use my plow.
No, Terry's house.
Yeah. Who else? Who else is driving?
Yeah, I think that's part of it.
And I love that mentality. I wish more people embrace that spirit. Unfortunately, we just can't, we can't rely on it.
No.
And I can't rest my mind, with going into more snow seasons with knowing that there's people out there that are jeopardizing their health or that don't have the help and resources when they need it. So it's just something simple we could do. Can we then make, I don't know if it merits a motion or what do we need to do in order to move this along as far as, is it something that we're going to talk about in the workshop then, as far as like a snow program that we'd be taking out of putting into our budget, right?
We might as well talk about it in the workshop.
And I love the idea of taking the snow fees and putting that towards the
I'd
cost
say
of
let's
it.
start drafting something.
Okay.
Let's start drafting what that program looks like and go from there.
Okay.
Criteria is gonna be the strong.
Criteria.
That's gonna be a hard to beat out.
That'd be very
But still, again, we don't want to become the federal government, we don't want to be 17 pages long, but it's gotta have, it's some criteria that's gotta be verifiable.
Right. Yep.
Right. Okay, moving on to capital improvement plan.
Okay, and this is why I figured when I asked Don to be here.
He's still here.
The levy cap rules, and I know I've talked about it, I've shared some information with you guys. There's a lot going on there. Don's done a lot of work, his crew have done a lot of work, there's a lot more to be done. We still don't have a good idea how much the cost is gonna be until we, figure out how many units we have. So here's just a copy of what the report that's called a distribution system material inventory. It's a preliminary one. Don did, turned in Department Eagle letter, first of the year. And you see, just simple, I don't want to get into much detail, but the little part on the very bottom right of that graph, the total service lines is 1,322. Of those, if you read from right to left, 775 are, we already know it contains neither lead nor galvanized or previously connected to lead. So it's pretty much all copper. So that leaves us around 547 all those ones to the left. Those 547 properties are going to have to be investigated in a couple of different ways. You got the curb stop out there. Typically, we own the curb stop back to Main. We have to verify that portion, and then you have the curb stop to the house, which is the private portion. We have to verify that. And how it's being proposed and done, and in practice also, is you get the big back truck loader and you hydrovac down and visually look at the line. So we're probably going to have to do that in the neighborhood of 500 some properties over some time frame. And then of those properties that we find galvanized going into the building or something like that, or lead, those will have to be done, and the state's mandating you do 5% a year, have the program done over 20 years to the replacements. Off the cuff numbers we're hearing, it's about $5,000 you can give or take from to replace the line from the curb stop into the meter. You might be going under, obviously on sidewalks, planters, you might have bushes out front. Some of them in some communities might even find that their curb stop is in a driveway or something. It's already, I think there's one, not that long ago in the neighborhood here, in a driveway or sidewalk. So a lot of work there. And when we talk about capital improvement plan, this is going to, if we talk to sewer and water, or up to water and streets, this is going to be a big indicator of where we're going and why we're going there. Don, anything you want to talk about specifically the water stuff?
So actually about 60% of the service lines are copper from main to the house. Some of the 522, I believe, they have to be investigated. We do have, say for instance, East and West Bird Street. We know that was all upgraded in 1998. So we may not have to hydro back at the curb stop. We may be able to just go into the residence and see what's coming in, if it's copper or